So my wife and I were looking at different outdoor furniture sets, and the prices of these things blew me away. And of course, the style that I liked was on sale for $7,800. $7,800 on sale. Originally $9,500. And this is what a $9,000 oversized sofa set looks like. I think that I can take this, put my twist to it. I'm just guessing here, but pretty sure I can build the frames for this for under 300 bucks. But let's find out. I've came up with a plan to make this, and I'm going to be teaching you step by step along the way. So using my highly sophisticated computer program here, I think that I have everything figured out to make a set that looks very similar to the ones that I like, just by using 1x6s and 1x4s. So after doing some prototyping, this is what I came up with for the arms, which looks pretty close to what's in the picture there. Has a nice taper here. I like this nice clean square look. So this is what we're going to go with. And the cool thing about this build is once you know how to build these arms, the only differences between the sofa, the love seat, and the chairs will be the length of the seat. So this exact same arm design can be used for all three. So let's go ahead and get started on these arms. I'll be teaching you step by step as I go, and you're going to be surprised at just how easy this is and how good it's going to look when we're done. All right, so for the lumber, like I mentioned earlier, this entire build can be made from 1x4s and 1x6s. But also keep in mind that a 1x4 is actually 3.5 and a 1x6 is 5.5. And I chose to use untreated pine for this because I'm actually going to be staining and finishing all of this with an oil, but you can use whatever that you would like. You can use treated lumber, which is actually a heck of a lot cheaper than untreated. Or if you'd like a little bit more of the chunky look, you could actually use 2x4s and 2x6s, which is about half the price of this. So really, it's up to you. Use whatever you want. But let's go ahead and get started with this pine. So since the entire outside the arm and leg assembly are all made out of 1x6 material, let's go ahead and start with that. And I've already made the first set of cuts that we're going to start with, which will make one arm assembly. Then I'll just cut one more of each one of these boards. That way I have enough material to make a pair. So I'm going to give you the dimensions of each one of these arm and leg assemblies. How can you survive that, you zombie fly? And for this step, I'm only going to be telling you the lengths because we are using the exact same width material for all of this to start with. Now, we will be ripping down a couple of pieces later, but for now, let's get our boards cut. And as always, I'm going to be walking you through this step by step, teaching you how to make this sofa set. The one thing that I did not build in this video is the love seat, but if you're a plans in the hand type of person and you would like the plans for the sofa, the chairs, and the love seat, head over to my website. I'll make sure to throw a link in the description. We're going to need two of each one of these lengths. We're going to need 33.5, 11.25, 6.5, 23.5, 28.75, 34.25, 21.75, and 30 7/16. And I'll mention each one of these lengths again as we come to them in the build. Okay, so now that we have all of our parts cut to length, there are going to be 3 of these that we need to rip down to 4.75. And the reason why is because they're going to be butt jointed up against another piece of material. So to make it square, we'll need to remove the thickness of this material, which is 3/4. And before I get started on cutting down anything, you know that I'm going to be throwing on my Gator's eye protection with ballistic lenses, my RZ mask, and my Axle hearing protection. If you're interested in a sweet discount on any of these, I'll throw a link in the description. So the parts that we're going to be ripping down to 4.75 are 34.25 inch boards, our 4.75 inch boards, and our 11.25 inch boards. Okay, so now that we have these boards cut, let's go ahead and move on to our next step, which is going to be cutting the angle on the back leg. So I have my little prototype here. This is what I'm talking about, where this angles down and then goes back to full width. So the way that we're going to measure this out to cut, so at the very top it's going to be 2.5 inches, and then where it returns back to its full width is going to be 12 inches from the bottom. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So these are our 2 back legs. And what we're going to do for each one of these legs is just measure up 12 inches. I'm going to make a mark, and then at the top, on the opposite edge, I'm going to measure over 2.5. I'm going to make a mark. So I have a mark here on this end and a mark here on this edge. Now I just need to connect those 2 marks. For that, I'm just going to use my other leg. That's all you need is a straight edge of some kind. Take it all the way to the edge of the material and mark your line. And it's going to look like this. Then we'll just repeat that for our second back leg. Okay, so now that I have these marks, there's several different ways to make this cut. My prototype, I actually just use a circular saw. You can use a jigsaw, or if you have a miter jig for your table saw, definitely use that. And I know I've told you guys this before, but just a little tip. If you have any closed cell styrofoam, it makes a great cutting surface for circular saws. And I'm just going to use one of the boards that I'm going to cut just to widen the surface out a bit, and then line the edge of my track with my markings. Now, if you're using a track saw, you actually do not even need to make the mark. You just need to mark your 2 points. Where the line comes in handy is if you're using a circular saw and an edge guide. Okay, so regardless of how you decided to do it, this is what you end up with. Like I said on the prototype, I just used a circular saw and it turned out perfect. But use whatever you want. These little scrap pieces, tall Christmas tree, there's something out to do with them. They'll go in the one-day pile. Okay, so once we have our 2 back legs cut, now let's go ahead and start adding parts to this thing until we have a completed side piece. Now we're going to need the 11 1/4 by 4 3/4 board, which is going to be this back leg support. That's what I'm going to call it. It's just going to go in here, connect to our back leg, and then it's also going to be connecting to this seat support. My joinery of choice for this build is going to be pocket hole screws and wood glue. Again, you could use any type of joinery that you would like. You could even glue this and just nail it into place. But this is going to make it a lot more sturdy in the long run. I'm going to mark my boards for pocket hole placement as I build this side. But I'm going to go ahead and mark the matching board for the opposite side. That way I don't accidentally put my pocket holes on the wrong side. So what I like to do whenever I'm placing pocket holes in left and right pieces is to just lay the 2 pieces out beside each other, and I'm actually going to mirror my screw placement. So for these on edge, I'm going to mark 2 inches, 10 inches, and 20 inches. And I'll do the same thing on this side. 2, 10, and 20. That's where my pocket hose would go. Now if I were to do this second one the exact same way as I did this one, facing the same direction, then my pocket hose would be over here, then it would be on the outside and they would be exposed. So if you want to keep them hidden, try doing it this way. Then for our 11 1/4 inch back leg brace, at the top, I'm going to measure in 1 inch on both sides. And on all of these sides, I'm going to measure in 2 inches from each end. So with my pocket hole placement marked, I'm going to head over to the 720 and knock these out. Every time. Tighten this thing up, man. If you enjoy the channel, what you're watching, or taking anything away from it, then do me a favor and support the channel by hitting my logo or the subscribe button in the bottom right hand corner. Just think, if everyone actually subscribed that watched, the possibilities would be endless for this channel. So if you've ever seen me line up a board and kind of do this, what I'm actually doing is looking through the hole in the jig and finding my mark and clamping it down. Makes things super easy. Okay, so you can see how I have my right and my left sided parts here, that all my pocket holes are just mirror images of each other. So I'm just going to show you how to assemble this right side. So let's go ahead and get these back leg braces glued and attached to our back legs. I'm going to be attaching these to the back outside corner. And what I'm going to do to attach these, just so that they're good and flush, is just turn it on its edge. That's just going to allow me to line everything up better. All right. I'm going to go ahead and switch all of my screws out to this 1 1/4 blue coat screw. The blue coat's actually designed for exterior use, and I'm using exterior wood glue. So essentially, let's say if this was a chair, this is what it would look like in the back. So with our 2 back legs assembled and attached to our back leg braces, let's do the exact same thing for the front legs. So our front legs are 23.5 inches long. And the front leg brace, that's going to be those 2 6.5 inch boards that we cut down to 4 3/4. And that's all that I'm going to do to get these ready to attach, is to mark out my screw placement, which is going to be 1 inch from each side on one end, and then 1 inch from each edge on the side. Again, I'm just going to copy that to my mirrored board. So I'll cut these pocket holes and then get these attached to our front legs. All right, so we have our 2 front leg boards and then our boards with our pocket holes. We're wanting the pocket holes that are in one end, we want those to be facing up, so they will go on just like this. Outside edge, empty pocket holes facing up. Okay, so just so we can kind of visualize what's going on, we have our legs, they're going to be looking like this, and we have our back legs, they're going to be like this. They are not going to be like that, they're like this. Okay, so this angle is facing forward, just like that. So for this next step, let's go ahead and attach the back leg and the front legs together. And for that, we're going to be needing our boards that are 28 3/4 of an inch long. So I went ahead and placed my pocket holes on each end of my 28-inch boards, and these will install like this. So it's going to sit on top of this 6.5-inch brace, and it will attach to the side of the back. So let's go and get those installed. Okay, so to install these, like I said, it's going to be sitting on top of the 6.5-inch. I'll start off by attaching it to the front leg. And you see on the front leg, I have my 2 pocket holes going up. That's going to be connecting to this. And then on this support, the 2 going in, that will connect this. So it's just kind of locking everything together. So with it attached to our front, let's go ahead and attach it to our back. Just to make sure everything is the same distance, I'm going to measure up 6.5 inches and we'll lock her down. I'm going to knock out this other side, then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so the next step is going to be installing the inner seat slats. And I went ahead and put 2 pocket holes on one end of the board, and then on the inner edges, install pocket holes at 2, 12, and 24 inches. So these seat supports will sit on top of our back leg support, and then we'll be even with our side here. Since we already have screws that are going to be coming up from that back leg support into this board, we do not need pocket hole screws there, but we do need those 2 up front that's going to attach to our front leg. So just like this. Let's get these installed. Okay, so this is where we're at. And all of our pocket holes are on the inside, so looking good. So now let's go ahead and put this one together, same way. Keep on moving. All right, so everything is looking good, except I noticed one thing that I have forgot. These front legs, I did not put pocket holes on the insides of these. And the arm of the chair is actually going to be sitting on top. So I need pocket holes facing up on the inside of each one of these front legs. So let me go ahead and do that. Obviously, this would have been a heck of a lot easier if I had done it right the first time, but it happens. So we have to get a little creative here. There's a will, there's a way. So they say. And since this is a pretty tight corner here, to get this to work, I'm going to have to actually use this right angle tool and put my bit in there. It's pretty pitiful. Okay, so now that we have that all fixed, let's move on. The next step is going to be to install our backrest support. And these were our 21 3/4 inch boards. So in order to install this, we're actually going to have to make a couple of cuts. This board is intended to sit just like this, but we have this angle. This is actually an 8-degree angle. So in order for this to sit flush on our bottom, we'll need to put an 8-degree cut on each one of our ends. And if your miter saw isn't tall enough to make this cut with the board standing on its edge, then you can easily use your table saw or a circular saw. And if you've already cut your boards to length, that's all that we're going to be doing is just shaving the ends, leaving the full length of the board. Now that we have our 8-degree angles on each end, went ahead and drilled out 2 pocket holes on the end that will be going down facing in. So from the back, we'll be able to attach it from the bottom and the pocket holes in the side. Let's go ahead and get that done. All right, so it's going to be the brace for our back seat. Let's go ahead and install this one so we can work on our arms. Okay, so to put these arms on, these are going to be our boards that were 30 7/16. What you're going to need to do is put an 8-degree angle on one side because it will actually be connecting to this angled board, just like this. Then this side will sit flush and then connect from underneath, and then this side will sit flush against this, and then we'll have 2 pocket holes on the underneath of this board. So on the side that you put the 8-degree angle on, you'll need to add 2 pocket holes. So we'll get that knocked out, get these installed, and we're ready to rock. Okay, so there's a couple of different ways to find your measurement for your arm. All right, so we're going to be putting our angled end up against the angled board, and of course this flat end against our flat board, like this. So This should be theoretically 11 and a half if everything was cut exactly perfect and this angle is exactly perfect, but we're not perfect people. So the best way to find out is with a level, right? So we want to make sure that our base is level. That's perfectly level. Now let's put it up here on our arm and raise this back up and down because we know that we want a 90-degree here on the front. So we'll raise this back up and down until we're perfectly level. Don't ever do that. So then once you have your level, go ahead and make your mark underneath of your board. We know that that's where it's going to be attached. And of course, we know where this one's going to be attached. So that's the easiest way to actually set this arm up. And to install it, I like to lay it flat. All right. And there we have it. This is what makes up this entire set. Like I said, the rest is just going to be slats and things like that, connecting these two together. And this is it. So you just repeat this over and over for if you want extra chairs, if you want the love seat, couch, however. Okay, so we have our both leg and arm assemblies done. Now it's time to actually tie these together. Almost. So I ran across one more thing that I did not take into account whenever I was pre-drilling my pocket hole screws, and that is going to be for a cat board that goes across. So whether you're building chair, love seat, or sofa, they're all going to have these cat boards. So all of these arm and leg assemblies will need a way to attach this board from underneath. So let's go ahead and get that out of the way, and then finally we can start putting these things together. So since these things are already assembled and I need to add in a couple of pocket holes, I'm just going to use Craig's 520 to do that, just because that's what it's made for, getting into odd places and things like that. But if you do this before it's assembled, you don't have to worry about doing it now. Just an FYI, I actually design and build most of these projects as I'm recording the video, and then the plans are created afterwards. So these couple of little things that I've ran into that I've forgotten about, no worries, they'll all be accounted for on the plans. I'm going to put two in the end of this board and one just in the middle of our back leg. I'm going to go ahead and do this to the other side, and then we can keep on rolling. Now it's time that you need to decide what you're making. So is this going to be a chair, a love seat, or a sofa? I'm going to make this one into a chair, then I'll make a sofa or a love seat next. I won't be showing you how to make these arms again because the chair assemblies are the exact same regardless of what you're building. So the only difference between the chair, love seat, and sofa is going to be the length of the connecting boards. So since most outdoor sofa cushions are 25 inches wide, I'm going to make my spacing between the arms 25 inches wide. Then for the love seat, since there's typically two cushions, I'll make that one 50. And then if I were doing the couch, I would actually make that one 75. So just however long you decide to make this, add an extra 25 inches for every cushion that you want to add in between. So for the chair, 25 inches. Next, we're going to be needing three 5.5-inch boards that are 25 inches long. And each one of these boards will need 2 pocket holes on each end. Okay, so to install this first connecting board, going across the front, I'm going to flip these things over, that way it's easier to install. Okay, so from the bottom of the front leg, I'm going to measure up 11.25, which should bring you right to the bottom of this seat support. And that's where we want the top of the board to go. It's going to be just like this. So let's get these glued up and installed. I'm going to put a back connecting board going the exact same way, same height. So this is 5 3/4 from the bottom to the floor, in case you're wondering. Let's go ahead and flip this over and get this back connected. So for these connecting boards, I told you that each one of these will be 25 inches wide for these chairs. We're going to need 2 pocket holes in each end. And for this one, since the next board will be sitting on top of it, I went ahead and put 2 more connection points at the top of the board. This is just going to sturdy things up. And again, just like with the front, at 5 3/4, this should put us right below the seat support. Let's take our last 25-inch board. Again, 2 pocket holes on each side, set it right on top, and then slide it behind the board that we just installed. All right, let's see how we are looking. Looking good. Okay, so the next step is going to be to install that cat board that I was talking about, that I've forgotten to put the holes for the fasteners in. It's going to sit just like this, just to help tie everything in together. So now we're done with our 6-inch material, or 5.5. And from here on out, we're going to be using our 1x4s, or 3.5. So for this cat board, I've taken a 1x4, cut it to 36 inches long, and then ripped it down to 3.25 of an inch wide. So we're just going to get everything squared up with our cat board. Then we'll install one end, Then we may have to do a little bit of adjusting for the second end. It'd actually be a good idea to cut this cat board just a little bit longer. That way you can actually custom fit this once you get it installed, just in case any of this material had any type of a bow, twist, anything like that. So now we need to install our back boards and our bottom boards. I'm going to start with the back. So we're going to need 5 of our 1x4s cut at 31 inches long. So these 1x4s cut at 31 inches long will not be enough to reach the sides, which that's fine, because for our last step we'll be adding an edge board to cover all of this. We'll space all of these 1.5 inches from the sides. And I'm going to install my slat starting at the top and leaving a 1-inch gap between each board. Now whenever you get down to the bottom board, it's only going to leave about a 3/4 of an inch gap where it meets the seat. But I'm doing mine this way to allow for any variation in the wood width. And for now, I'm just putting some glue down and attaching this with brad nails. For the next step, I'll be locking everything together with screws. So before you install your screws, go ahead and cut your boards for the next step, which is going to be back trim. So still using the 1x4s, cut 2 boards that are 21.5 inches long, trace the line where they're going to go, and this will give you an idea of what will be covered. That way you don't accidentally put your screws too far out. I'm just going to pre-drill each one of my boards and install a couple of 1.25-inch deck screws in the ends of each board. Again, all of these screws will be covered. Once you have those down, we'll install our back trim. And for this, I'm going to be using wood glue and just a few screws because this is basically just to clean up the edges. So I'll only be putting a screw 3/4 of an inch in from the edge on the bottom board, connecting to the bottom board, the center board, and the top board. Once that's done on both sides, let's go ahead and get this bottom knocked out. And for the bottom slats, we're going to install these the same way that we did for the back slats. So for this, we'll be needing 7 boards that are 3.5 inches wide by 31 inches long. I'm going to start flush at the front, use 1-inch spacing, keeping my boards 1.5 inches away from the edge. And yeah, finally smartened up and just cut me a couple of 1-inch spacer blocks. But I'm just going to throw in some brad nails to hold these into place. And just like for the back, pre-drill and install 1.25-inch deck screws. Now since this is the bottom, I personally am not going to put trim boards on this. If you'd like to put trim boards on, go for it. Do it the exact same way as we did for the back. Now this is a chair. I love it. Love how deep it is. I love how it's made with 3/4 of an inch material. It's just a different look for such a big outdoor chair. Most people are making these out of 2x4s, 2x6s, 2x8s, you know, however. But as sturdy as this thing is, being made out of 3/4 of an inch material, this thing's going to be awesome. It's going to look awesome. So now the only thing left to do, get some sanding done, stain paint, whatever you'd like. Get some cushions on this thing and add to the collection with a Loveseat or a sofa. So speaking of, I'm going to get busy and throw together a matching piece. Okay, so with the chair done and stained up, I decided to go ahead and do the sofa. That way, in case I needed some bracing in the middle, I can go ahead and get all of that worked out. And pretty sure I'm going to need some bracing. But for now, we're going to connect these 2 arms the exact same way that we did for the chair. And remember, all of these arms are built the exact same way. So we're going to start off with our 75-inch connecting boards. We'll need 2 of these with pocket holes on each end. Then we'll need 1 for the back with pocket holes in each end. And then 1 with pocket holes facing up so we can tie our boards together in the back, just like we did for the chair. Now, as you can see, I was staining my chair. Went ahead and stained all the parts for this sofa. Once I finish with this assembly, I'll just have to go back and do a few touch-ups before I put my finish on. Okay, so I just flipped my legs over and I found some places that I missed on the staining. Make sure that whenever you're staining or sealing this material, especially if it's untreated, make sure to seal everything. Most important things are going to be the ends of this material where it's actually touching concrete or the ground. So now that we have our 3 support slats on, we're going to go ahead and attach our cat board. So it's going to be the exact same width as our chairs, which is 3.25. The only difference that will be for the sofa is that it's going to be 85 3/4 of an inch long. Let's go ahead and get that installed and then we'll start on our slats. So just keep in mind as you're putting this cat board on that we will be installing some brace boards. I'll give you the exact details here shortly, but I plan on installing these every 25 inches will essentially give us the same support as the chair. And since this cat board is so long, I'll make the bracing so that it actually supports the cat board as well as the back boards. So I'm just using a piece of 3.5-inch scrap just to mark out where my back slat trim will end up. So with that mark, I know that I need to keep all of my screws inside of that mark so that my back trim will cover everything up. Now let's go ahead and install our back slats. Just like our chair, I'm going to start at the top, install that one, and then work our way down to the bottom using 1-inch spacing. And for these back slats, we're going to be using the same 3.5-inch material, except for the sofa, we're cutting these at 84 inches long. Now for the chair, the reason why I left such a big gap on the ends of our slats is just so I could get an extra slat out of each one of my boards. For this outdoor sofa, you're not going to be able to get 2 boards out of one, so I'm going to cut these long enough so that whenever I install my screws, I'm far enough away from my edges that I don't have to worry about pre-drilling or bust out. Okay, so what I came up with for supporting the back, since on the chair we covered the edges of these boards with trim, I decided for the couch to make the trim boards the support boards as well. So in order to do that, since this back is sitting at an 8-degree angle, all that I did was take 4 boards 21 5/8 of an inch long, and then just put 8-degree angles going the same direction on each end. I'm going to throw 1 on each side like we did for the chair, and then I'm going to put 2 in the middle 25 inches apart. Then to fasten this to the bottom and the top of the frame, I just cut pocket holes on the tops and bottoms of each one on the short side of the 8-degree angle. Now with those cut, that's all I need to do is slide these into place. Now to get these installed, like I mentioned, I'm going to put 1 on each end. And for the 2 center boards, let's just measure from our outside edge and place these on center at 30 inches. And then once those are in place, let's go ahead and lock these down with some pocket hose screws. Just these 4 extra boards are going to provide a ton of extra support for this sofa. So with the back slat supports in place, let's go ahead and attach each one of these slats to the back slat support with a screw. And since these back slats are already attached on each end, I'm only going to be using 1 screw per slat on each support. And if you're wondering about my 2 1-inch spacer blocks, a couple of my boards had a little bit of a bow, so I'm just using my spacers to help straighten that out. So now that we have all of our back slats installed and secure, let's go and flip this thing back over and finish up with the seat slats. And then for the seat slats, we're going to do the exact same thing as before, placing our boards in, spacing them 1 inch apart, and then locking them down with screws. Again, these seat slats are 84 inches long, and you're going to need 7. Okay, so now that we have all of these slats installed, our 4 slat supports are going to be 33.5 inches long, and again, these are 3.5-inch boards. Already put pocket holes in each ends of the boards. And like we did for the back supports, let's go ahead and space these out at 30 inch to the center of the board from the outside edge. So keep in mind, if you're making the Loveseat, it's 25 inches shorter than the couch. So instead of needing 2 supports in the center for the slats, you really only need 1. And then just like we did for the back, we'll attach our slats to our slat supports using 1 1/4-inch screws. And that's all there is to this oversized outdoor sofa. But I kind of had an idea with this. This is the larger oversized furniture look. The thing would be super cool if it didn't have legs and it was actually a swing. Now we just have to test it out. Have to give it the, Peach needs to go on a diet test and see if it breaks. But this thing's built pretty solid. I think that we're going to be okay. Now we just need our couch cushions to come in. I have some ordered and total everything up and see exactly how much I have in this set. We have decided, my wife has decided, that we want 2 chairs and the sofa instead of the Loveseat. So let's go ahead and put the pencil to it and see how much money that I actually saved by building it myself. I know it can't be anywhere near what they're trying to sell it for. All right, so it's time to see how we actually did on our sofa set. Can we beat the $9,000 set? Pretty sure we did. Okay, so with the chairs, I actually used 1x4s and 1x6s for this, but after doing a little bit of pricing, I actually would have saved a lot of money if I had just used 1x12s. 1x12s right now in my area are $12.25 a piece, and the wider boards like that are always better quality. So if I built these out of 1x12s and just ripped them down to size, the total cost for the wood for each chair would be $53.82. And for the sofa, again, if I'd used 1x12s, would have came out to $134.75. So in total, $242 to make the frames for this outdoor sofa set. Now, not every patio will fit an oversized sofa, so if you're interested in the Loveseat, I'll make sure to throw a plan for that in this patio suit as well. But I'm going to assume that it's going to cost right around the same in material to make because the horizontal boards are only about 25 inches shorter. Okay, so now let's talk about the cushions. I don't know if you guys have priced cushions, but they're outrageous. We need to go into the cushion business. But the cheapest set of cushions that I could find to fit this, which would take a 25 by 25 cushion, which is an odd size. Another way that you could save a little bit of money is not make them as deep. If you actually just brought this in just 1 inch, you could use 24 by 24 cushions, save a little bit of money. But the cushions alone, the cheapest ones that I could find were $50 each, and that's for the seat in the back. So the couch and 2 chairs will take 5 cushions, so $250, which which is crazy because the cushions are costing more than the material to build this thing. But regardless, you have to have something to sit on, so unless you can make some, add that in there for a grand total of $492, so less than $500 to build the entire set with the cushions. Now let's say that you wanted to build the Loveseat and 2 chairs. That's only going to take 4 cushions in total, so you save an extra $50 there. So just by using creativity and putting our own little twist to things, we were able to take a super overpriced item that we really like, and by building it ourselves, get it down to an affordable price. So the next time that you see something that you like and it has some crazy price on it, take a long look at it, see if you can break it down in your head and build it yourself. That's how we learn, and that's how we grow as woodworkers. Till next time, see ya.